On today's episode, we'll visit a small local farm near my hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. We'll learn about the most famous spring vegetable of all, asparagus, the star of the show, today on Harvest Eating. Stay tuned, because after our location segment, I'll show you how to make a delicious sesame ginger seared flank steak with plenty of perfect asparagus spears. Then, grilled asparagus with a lemony mustard vinaigrette. And finally, a delicious cream of asparagus soup with garlic herb croutons. Today's visit to Cane Creek Asparagus Company was very pleasant. Not only do they grow terrific asparagus, but also a wealth of other wonderful crops, including lots of greens, cabbages, carrots, broccoli, and much, much more. The Cane Creek Asparagus Company takes its name from the creek that runs through the Cane Creek Valley, and the cane stalks that still grow on its banks today. They were once used to make fishing poles. On this beautiful farm, growing commences in late winter. Plants are started from seed in a proprietary all-natural soil and compost mixture. They are tenderly raised in a temperature-controlled greenhouse that's attached to the owner's home, which ensures plenty of attention during the seedling's growth cycle. Once old enough, plants are staged outside to acclimate for a few days to the ambient temperatures, sunlight, and prevailing winds. Then they are transplanted down to the rich, fertile Cane Creek Valley, where in a few short weeks they will wind up in the baskets of their CSA members. Glenda and her husband serve up the freshest, most perfectly grown produce I have seen, and each week their CSA members get an entire box of goodness. Of course, these lucky CSA members also get a nice stash of the crop that made them famous, Cane Creek asparagus. The asparagus plant is a member of the lily family, like garlic, onions, and leeks. Once planted, it takes roughly 3 seasons before harvesting can begin. This allows the asparagus plant to grow a strong and productive root system. Asparagus plants, if started properly in good soil, will continue to produce for about 15 years. Stay tuned. When we return, I'll make a delicious sesame ginger seared flank steak with plenty of perfect asparagus spears.
Reusable canning lids, family owned since 1976. That's right, Tatler reusable canning lids. Yes, reusable with a lifetime guarantee. Made in America, BPA free. Tatler reusable canning lids, because those who can do. Get rid of the disposable lid. Go to reusablecanninglids.com. Tatler reusable canning lids.
Welcome back to Harvest Eating. Now let's get started on our sesame ginger seared flank steak with asparagus spears.
So to get started with this flank steak dish, let's quickly talk about the flank steak. This comes from the underside of the steer, and it can be a very tough cut. And if you cut it incorrectly, you're going to make it that much tougher. And you can see right on this meat that there is sort of lines that run like this. This is with the grain. You got to cut against the grain, perpendicular to those lines. If you cut it with the lines, it's going to be like shoe leather. So let's get started. Another thing we're going to do is turn our knife on an angle. It's called cutting on the bias. This also helps to tenderize the meat. All right, now that we have the meat all sliced up, let's toss it in our work bowl over here, and then we can start marinating it. So starting in with our Asian seasoning, what we're gonna do is add some low sodium soy sauce. I'm not gonna put all of it because we're gonna reserve some for a little later. And then we have what's called toasted sesame oil, and this is this ingredient, and this is what's gonna give the dish its sesame component. And we are gonna put the whole lot of it in there, and it's not much, it's only about a teaspoon. Next up is going to be our Harvest Eating steak seasoning. This can be found in the Harvest Eating store. We'll get a little of this down on top of the meat. It's going to give it great flavor. And what we're going to do is just toss it around and get those ingredients somewhat combined. And you don't have to let it marinate a long time, half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever. It's going to make a difference. And now we need to get started with aromatics. And whenever you're doing Asian dishes, aromatics are very important. Today we're going to be using fresh ginger, garlic, and shallot, and that is going to be our aromatic punch for the dish. With the ginger, when you buy it in the store, it's going to have this real hard coating on it. You could use a peeler, a paring knife, or you just take a spoon like this and you just scrape. Just like this, but don't worry about getting every last bit off. Okay, that's going to be enough. Let's take our knife, get this out of the way. Now we're going to slice this up, and you want to slice it pretty fine because this is fibrous stuff. All right, now that we got the ginger minced up, now we want to turn our attention to the garlic and start mincing that up. All right, that is minced up plenty fine. Move it off right with the ginger. It's going to go in the pan at the same time. And next up is going to be our shallot. And this is a whole shallot. We're going to use all of it. All right, that's the shallot. Let's get our wok heated up. Get that turned on, a pretty good heat. And now, to spice things up a bit, I am going to add this pepper. This is a datil pepper. This is a spicy little pepper from St. Augustine, Florida. If you check out the show in a couple weeks, you'll see a whole episode about this. So we're just going to slice this guy up. We do sell the seeds in the Harvest Eating store if you're interested in growing it yourself. Okay. So all of our aromatics are now chopped up. We're going to take a little of our Thoughtful Harvest extra virgin olive oil and get into the pan. Just swirl it around a bit. I'm also going to turn on my overhead fan. And now let's drop these aromatics down all at once. Just like that. All right, now that the aromatics are working, let's pay attention to asparagus. What we want to do is chop off the very tip of each spear, about 2.5 inches worth. Just slice them down. And now these are going to go right down into the pan with the aromatics. And before we put the beef in there, we want to give these a little bit of a head start. Okay, after about 2 minutes, it's time to get the beef down in the pan. And the last thing we're going to toss in there is that soy sauce that we reserved. Now you just got to cook it. Well, our asparagus and beef are done cooking. I'm just going to serve it with a little mold of brown rice, simply cooked with a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper. And this smells really incredible. And just do it family style like this. A big plate. And the asparagus are not overcooked. They still have nice crunch to them, which is beautiful. We'll go ahead and put down just a little juice, just like that. All right, that looks delicious. There is sesame ginger flank steak with beautiful asparagus spears.
Stay tuned. When we return, I'll make grilled asparagus with a lemony mustard vinaigrette. Welcome back to Harvest Eating. Now let's get started making our grilled asparagus with our lemony mustard vinaigrette.
First thing we need to do with our grilled asparagus, just to get a little oil and seasoning on them, then they're going to go down in the pan. But I wanted to address sort of a wives' tale. A lot of these French chefs, they'll all tell you that you've got to peel these asparagus. That's horse manure. You don't have to peel the asparagus, particularly when you're going to grill them, because they'll fall apart. This stuff is perfectly edible. Do not bother peeling them. So a little bit of Thoughtful Harvest olive oil, and this is just to lubricate these up so they don't stick to our grill, not too much, just like that. A little bit of black pepper, like that, and then a little bit of kosher salt. Just sprinkle it on there. You want to just toss these around so they're evenly coated, and down in the pan they go. And now you just want to let these cook. Okay, while those asparagus cook, let's make the vinaigrette. And this is going to be a lemon chive vinaigrette. It's going to go beautiful with these asparagus. First thing we want to do is take our nice spring chives like this and get these minced up. We want them to be very fine. We don't want big pieces of chive. So I'll cut these right in half and take a sharp chef's knife and really mince them up fine. Okay, now let's get these chives right down in our bowl. Now, we want to add some good mustard. This is a Dijon mustard, so about a tablespoon. And that helps to thicken it up as well as give it flavor. Next up is a little bit of our Harvest Eating. This is our Greek chicken seasoning. We just want to take a little tip of a knife full and put that in there. Delicious stuff. And here is a lemon. Lemon, chives, they go very well together. Take this lemon and roll it on the board. You've seen me talk about this a lot. Just like that. Take your knife right in half, and then take a little strainer and put it on there. We don't want any of those seeds getting in there. So just squeeze, and this is the acid for the vinaigrette. In most vinaigrette recipes, you know, you'll hear about a vinegar, but in this one, we're calling it a vinaigrette, but citrus is our acid here. A little bit of salt. This is kosher salt, just a pinch. Some black pepper. And then take your whisk and you mix these ingredients through. Now when you make a vinaigrette, you want to emulsify it, and you do that by drizzling your oil. In this case, we're using our extra virgin olive oil, and just slowly drizzle that in like that. And that is thickened up perfectly. So we'll take this, set this aside, and now we just need to keep cooking these asparagus until they get some really nice grill marks on it, and then we can finish up. Take them right out. We're going to lay them on this serving platter here. This is definitely one of my favorite ways to eat asparagus. So now we're going to take a little bit of our really nice vinaigrette. So we'll come right over the top like this. Maybe a touch more. And then we want to garnish it. We're going to use a little bit of lemon. Just tuck some lemon. And here's just a few chive bits. Just put those kind of randomly across your lemon. And there is a beautiful grilled asparagus with a lemon chive vinaigrette.
Stay tuned. When we return, I'll make a delicious cream of asparagus soup with garlic herb croutons. Welcome back to Harvest Eating. Now let's get started on our cream of asparagus soup.
So continuing on this asparagus adventure, before we get into the soup, let me show you how to make these garlic and herb croutons. Super simple. You're going to see it happen right here. Please do not buy croutons. This is something we all should be making. Here is some day-old bread. And this is little mini ciabatta breads. Very simple. We're going to cut it up and then start the seasoning process. Take a good serrated knife and start to cut these up. Okay, once you have these cut up, what we want to do now is get some heat under the pan, and I chose a good heavy bottom pan. You don't want a flimsy pan. We're going to turn it on about a medium heat, so quite a bit of heat under there. And now what we're going to do is take some butter, and this is where you want to use good ingredients. Don't use margarine or something cheap. This is a good, local butter. It's a real butter, and don't be shy. Take a good bit of butter, Drop it down in the pan. Then we're going to take some of our Thoughtful Harvest extra virgin olive oil and get down maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons of that nice oil. And then let's get the bread in there. Once we have the bread in there and everything is starting to melt down, now we're going to season it up. And this is our Northern Italian. This is an excellent spice blend. We do have this in the Harvest Eating store if you want to get it. If you don't, you can use any old Italian seasoning that's dried like this. And this one happens to have garlic and also little bits of porcini mushroom. So we're going to sprinkle right on here. So all in all, probably maybe a tablespoon of this seasoning. We're not going to put any salt, but we are going to come in with a little bit of black pepper. And you certainly could add something like Parmesan or Romano cheese to this to make it special. So now you just want to toss it around a little bit, and the idea is to get the bread coated in the oil and the butter, and then we're going to cook it in this pan for about 10 to 15 minutes until it starts to get nice and crisp. All right, our croutons have finished cooking. They've gotten nice and golden brown and they're crispy and crunchy, delicious. Let's set these aside and continue on with our asparagus soup. The first thing we want to do is break down shallots and garlic and get those working in our pot. And this is all going to be strained out, so don't stress the size as long as they're somewhat chopped up. So let's turn the burner on. Got a little heat under our pot. First thing we're going to do is take some of our Thoughtful Harvest extra virgin olive oil and get a glug or two down. Just like that. And now let's move these aromatics right into the pot. And this is going to be called sweating. We want to sweat these and get some of that aroma out. While those are sweating, let's cut up some celery and some carrots. And that is just fine. These are going to go down. And now what we want to do is take a little bit of salt. This is kosher salt, and season this up a bit. Black pepper. And then for this, we're going to use the Northern Italian seasoning mix again. It's perfect for this. Maybe half a teaspoon, something like that. Now we want to grab a spoon and just start to stir this mixture and let these vegetables sweat. Okay, now let's pay attention here to our asparagus. These are asparagus from another recipe, and what we want to do with these is just chop them up into little pieces. And what we're going to be doing, making this asparagus soup, we want to flavor the liquid. So you want these to be maybe a ½ an inch or so, and these are going to cook down and give up all their flavor. But remember, asparagus are pretty woody, they're fibrous. This is all going to be strained out after they give up all that beautiful flavor. All right, while that's cooking, we want to pay attention to this bunch of asparagus. And what we want to do is harvest the tips here. So just cut off about the top, maybe 1.5 inches. And then these are going to go right into this bowl right here. So there's our spears. Those are going to go into the soup a little later on. We'll save these stalks. And now what we want to do, now that these have sweat and give up plenty of flavor, we want to add our liquid. Now this is your choice. You could use a chicken broth here or straight water. It's totally up to you. We're going to use just straight water. Take our clean water and pour it right in, just like that. Now we want this to come up to a boil, turn it down to a simmer. We're going to give it roughly 35 minutes and we'll check back on it then. Okay, our soup is just about ready to finish. What I did is after it cooked for about 35 or 40 minutes, I transferred all the vegetables and the broth into my blender and I blended it down and poured it through a fine mesh strainer into here. Then I added my spears, the tips of the asparagus, and some organic heavy cream, stirred that through and seasoned it with salt and pepper, which is a very important step. Don't forget to re-season it towards the end. And now what we want to do is, in the restaurant business, we'd call this tightening it up. We're going to add a slurry. This is simply cornstarch and cold water. This is a slurry, and this is just off the boil. So now we're going to swirl this cornstarch right in here. So now we're going to bowl it up, just like that. And there's your soup, and the last step is to take some of our gorgeous croutons that are beautiful and golden brown, and we'll float those right on top. And that's it. A beautiful spring asparagus soup with a touch of cream and garlic herb croutons. Give this a try today. I hope you enjoyed today's asparagus recipes. I definitely want to encourage you to try growing it yourself. It's easy to grow. We have a lot of it growing on our farm, and you can see how versatile and delicious asparagus is. These recipes can be found on my website at harvesteating.com, and I hope to see you again next week for another episode of Harvest Eating.